Well, welcome to lesson 5 on equipping people for excellence. This is lesson 5 based upon the book, Developing the Leader Within You by John Maxwell. Now, today, I'm not going to really be going over the book on about developing people that is in the chapter, but some things are going to dovetail a little bit. But I want to give you a lot of new material on delegating to other people. And this is one of the hardest things a leader has to do. I mean, after all, it's a lot easier just to do it yourself. After all, if you delegate out to someone else, it may not get done the way you want it to get done. And so it's just easier not to do it. And then even after you recruit people and start into everything, then all of a sudden you're still wondering, what am I going to do with my time? I should have kept that job. And so we're going to be looking at this. And Ephesians chapter 4 tells us this. And he gave some as apostles, and some as prophets, and some as evangelists, and some as pastors and teachers, for the equipping of the saints, notice that, for the work of the service, to the building up of the body of Christ. And so you see, the biblical model for ministry is not for the pastors to be doing all the ministry, or even all the lay leaders to be doing all the ministry. Rather, we are to delegate by equipping the saints for the work of the ministry, that everyone has an opportunity to minister and make a difference for Jesus Christ. Now, in my first church, I have to admit, I did everything. If I didn't do it, my wife did it. And so, I did the preaching, we did the witnessing, we went out on visitation, we did a hospital visitation, we did everything, and it was exhausting to do. But then we grew to a certain point, and we realized we really couldn't do it all by ourselves. I read a book one time that talked about ratios between ministry and staff. It said for every 150 people that you're trying to reach in small group, not that you already have, but you're trying to reach in small group, you have to add a minister. For example, if you're running 300 in small groups, you have 2 ministerial staff people, you have to add a third one to reach the next 150. And why does that make that big of a difference? Well, not only do you delegate the ministry out, but then they in turn equip other people, lay people for ministry, because there's only so many people I can equip. And so we need the help of the entire body, not just the staff, the entire body being engaged in ministry and also delegating and training others as well. And I've taught my staff, we want to create as many jobs in the church as we need to, and not be afraid and say, oh, we just don't have enough people. My goodness, we have 1,000 people maybe involved in ministry, probably a little exaggerated there, maybe 700 or 800, but we have another 1,000 people or more that are just sitting there, maybe waiting for something significant to do. And so it's not just a matter of, hey, let's give everyone 3 or 4 different jobs. Our goal would be to give everybody one very significant job. Now, in equipping people, we are looking for excellence, not necessarily perfection, because that will never occur. So keep that in mind as we go throughout this lesson. Excellence really equals productivity. Now, in looking at equipping people, it's a very simple 3-step process, very simple. Number 1, you recruit and keep the right people. You get the right people on the bus, so to speak, in the right seats, as Jim Collins said in his book. Number 2, you equip them for the task. Can't skip that one. Number 3, you let them do it. And you say, well, that's too simple. Let's just quit right now. We can do all that. Well, it's simple to say. It's another thing to do it. And so I want you to take out your notes right now. If you haven't done so already, just stop the video, go to your notes, make sure you download those so you can go through these with me and you can keep what you are learning. Well, number 1, recruit and keep the right people here in this 3-step process. A leader's most important task is really recruiting leaders. I found that to be true in my own ministry. I've delegated out to other people to do things and to recruit people. I didn't train them the way I ought to train them. It really comes back to hurt you if you're not careful. Why is it the most important task for a leader? Well, because what we said before, everything rises and falls on leadership. Those closest to you, in the number 2 there, those closest to the leader will determine his level of success. Number 3, the church will never grow beyond its leadership. And so as we're looking at this, Three simple things. The leader's most important task. In this, then you ask yourself the second question. Who do I recruit? Well, be sure you recruit, not ask for volunteers. Now, I know we don't do this as a staff. No pastor is going to go out on the internet, we'll say, and ask for any minister of music, any education minister, youth minister that just wants to volunteer. We don't do that. We recruit them. We talk to them. We try to share with them what the vision of the church is and what the vision of the job is and the job description. But we often do this, just ask for volunteers. We even call them volunteers in the church. Now, when you just send out something to say, Pastor, we just want you to go to the pulpit and say, we need volunteers for this. We just need someone. We need a warm body. What that's telling people is, first of all, that the job's not important. Any warm body will do. It's just not important. If you want to do it, you do it. In fact, when you recruit someone and tell them this is an easy job, anybody can do it, you are encouraging them to tell you no. When you go out and recruit someone, you need to have the job description in your mind and you need to share with them how crucial this job is, because every job in the church is very, very important. We have two new guys right now moving the pulpit in place after the music is over. You think, well, that's a good job. Yes, it is a good job. When we didn't have that before, I would have to wait until some of the music people would put down their guitars or whatever and then clear out everything and then bring the pulpit on. And I would just have to start maybe preaching when the pulpit wasn't even there. No, now it's there on time as soon as the prayer is over, or really the lead in that we have for the series of messages. Once it's done, it's done. It's an important job. It's not just, hey, anybody can do this. We need someone faithful, available, and teachable to do that job. So you be sure you recruit. So as you're looking at this, you ask yourself the question, well, what kind of person do I really need? What are there some questions that I need to do? Well, yes, ask. Well, yes, assessment. That's the first thing in your outline. You need to assess what is needed. Very important. Do you need a leader? Are you going to ask them to lead an entire ministry, or do you need a worker? You need someone that'll actually do the task. They're not thinking about what to do. They're rather being told, hey, look, this is the task we need you to do. And they are faithful and, again, available to do that work. So do you need a leader? Do you need a teacher? Do you need an administrator? Somebody in music? What exactly is needed? Assess the position. Letter B in your outline. Ability. Who is able to do it? Who has the ability to lead? Who has the ability to do that particular job? C in your outline. Availability. Who is willing? Who's going to be a positive team player? Who's going to be loyal? Who is available? For example, we're going to go out maybe and look for a staff person. Not right now, but we've done this many, many times. You go out and look for someone, and maybe you think somebody, boy, this is the person that I really want for that job, but they're not available. They're in a church. They're happy where they are. Well, suddenly you need to look on to someone else because they are not available. So who is available in the church for you to recruit? Then D in your outline, accomplishments. Have they proven themselves? The last thing you want to do is take someone and put in a teacher's role, for example, or a deacon role that have not really proven themselves to be faithful to the job and really wanting to do that job. How do you prove yourself? You do small things, important things, but small things that do not necessarily need dedication, or they don't need preparation. Preparation is a good word. Preparation leading up to Sunday or Wednesday night. They can just show up, do the job, and they prove themselves to be worthy of that, prove themselves to be available and teachable for that. And now, because they've been faithful, as the Bible says, with small things, we're going to give them greater things. And so you have entry-level jobs, and then you recruit them, those that are proven. And then attitude. Who is positive? Answers the question. The first one, assessment, answers the question, what is needed? Then who is available? That's ability. Who is willing? Accomplishments. Who is proven? Now attitude. Who's positive? And it means more than just a positive attitude, because attitude is so important. We talked about that last week. Do they have a can-do attitude? Are they a team player? Are they submissive to authority over them? Are you going to delegate to them, train them, and all of a sudden they're going to do the job their way, in spite of the fact that it's really not helping your team as a whole? And so, what is the attitude as well? Now, thirdly, under recruiting, what about removing poor performers? Now, according to John Maxwell, removing poor performers is as important in getting good ones. Now, you think to yourself, well, wow, I don't want to replace anybody. I mean, after all, it's not fair to them. You have a teacher maybe that's teaching a class and the class is kind of dying out, but they're really doing the very best job they can do. They prepare. It's not that they're lazy. They really prepare and they seem to be wanting to do a good job, but it's just not their gift. And their class is beginning to die out. And we've faced this on staff as well. And you say, well, you shouldn't have let that guy go. I mean, it's not that he had a terrible attitude. He just really couldn't do the job. Couldn't you train him better? Well, obviously, anytime you have a situation where a person's not doing the job of the church, to replace them is very costly sometimes. I mean, it hurts relationships. So you want to go back and you think to yourself, have I communicated with this person? Have I been fair to this person? Have I trained the person properly? But then it may come down to a point where you have to ask yourself the question, fair to who? Are you going to be fair to them or fair to the rest of, we'll say, the class? If the class is not growing and the class is leaving, they're going to other classes or maybe even going to other churches because they don't feel like they're fitting in. Who are you going to be fair to? The rest of the people that they're not ministering to, or fair to them? And so you always have to ask yourself the question, who am I being fair to? And then you have to weigh the situation and the cost before you replace them, because sometimes you can plow around them. That's the old pastor was asked the question, I've got this family in the church, boy, they're just keeping us from growth. And they're just stick in the mud all the time. They got this little group and they're always protesting everything that we're trying to do. What do I do? And he found out they were a pretty prominent family in the area. And so he said, just plow around them. He said, when I was young working on the farm and I had a stump right there in front of me, I would either plow around it or I could take a stick of dynamite, put into the tree trunk and blow it up. But then again, I might blow up myself. Or I could plow around it, and after a few years of plowing around it, the roots would die and it'd just come up on its own. And so you have to weigh the situation and the cost. You can't have everything going, working on all cylinders all the time. And so how important is that job? And then C, in your outline, ask, is the person really trained? Or did they need more training? Do they need a transfer to another job? Maybe it is a teacher, but he make a perfect deacon. I mean, he really takes care of his group. Well, he makes just a perfect servant in that way. Or does he need to be terminated? That is, replaced. And so D in your outline, credibility of the leader, is at stake. You have to make tough decisions in life. You just have to make them. Now, I know that it's difficult in a leadership role. We all think that leadership is such a privilege. Man, boy, if you were the leader, you can do anything you want to do anytime you want to do it. I remember telling someone who wanted me to go on vacation with them, I said, I just can't make it. I've got this and this and this to do. And they looked at me and said, oh, you're the boss. You can do anything you want to do. Well, you can once or twice, but pretty soon your credibility is going to leave you. Well, it's the same way in dealing with people that are under you in ministry. Your credibility as a leader is at stake, because if everybody around sees that one person on your team is not obeying the rules, they're not on the team, they want to go their own way, they're all about themselves, whatever it may be, you have to make the tough decisions. A person that has to be loved cannot lead. Now, I want to be loved, and I know you want to be loved as well, but if you have to be loved, you cannot lead. Because if you have to be loved, you'll never make the tough decisions. So the big number 4, recruitment, is based on ability and the credibility of the leader. Now, when I say the ability and credibility, this is what I'm saying. 10s, if you're a 10 in leadership, 1 to 10 scale, and you are the best leader in the city, then you're probably going to recruit 8 and 9s. because other 10s are not going to work for you. They're going to have their own ministry, or they're going to have their own job or their own business. And so you go about trying to recruit 8 and 9s for your ministry. On the other hand, if you're a 7 in leadership, the best you can hope for is really a 5 or a 6, because 7s are not going to work for a 7 usually, and 8 and 9s and 10s are just going to get bored because they're going to think, oh, this is what I would do. Don't do that. Why don't you make this decision instead? This is the wisest thing. They're going to second guess in their mind the entire time. So they're just not going to work for you. So that tells us that the success of our leadership will be determined by how good a leader we can be and how we can grow as a leader. Well, then, not only number 4, but then we look at number 5. And that is a simple procedure in really recruiting someone. Sometimes in staff, it's very, very difficult because, who would go out and say marry someone after 3 dates? Very few. The best we can really do as we're flying people in from somewhere else is really 3 visits. And usually it's 2. We may be visiting them on the phone, and we may have some FaceTime with he and his family, but actually to bring them here, they look at the place, they look everything over. We interview them as a group, as a staff, but also, of course, the committee as well. And so everybody sees them one time. Maybe the person recruiting them sees them 2 or 3 times, and then we call them. A survey was done in a doctoral study in a seminary, and it was discovered that most committees felt like they hired the right person 25% of the time. And it grew to 50% when they really felt like they prayed about it. So it's not an easy thing to do. You say, well, in the church, in recruiting people under you as lay people, it's a little bit easier because the staff person knows them, knows whether they're faithful, knows whether they're available, knows whether they're teachable. So it does get better, but nevertheless, it is a challenge. So here's what we need to do. First of all, you need to pray about the person. Who's it going to be? Who are you going to target for this? Secondly, you write out a ministry description. And that answers the question, what? What are you asking them to do? Then C in your outline, very important, state the importance of the position and the fact that you need them. You have to convince them that the ministry job is important. If it wasn't important, why are you trying to get somebody to do it? Why not just do it yourself if it's so easy to do? No, you need someone to do that. And also, you maybe even had to create the job because you need someone, you need that person to do so. They need to be involved in the ministry. And so you are stating the importance and the fact that they have a piece of the rock. They have a seat at the table as they're ministering. And then D in your outline, offer training. You have to do the training, and we'll come back to that in just a minute. Then let them pray about it and set a deadline for a response. You're not asking them to say, oh, I'll do it. Sure, go ahead. Now, some people may because they've been praying about it already. But maybe you need to give them a few days to think about the decision. But since you have to recruit someone to that position at some point, you don't need to wait too long for the answer. So the second thing we need to do, first of all, you need to recruit the person. But then after that, you need to train the person. You've got to equip them for the task. And so there's a certain number of questions here that we'll just go over that you really, 3 in fact, that you really need to ask as you're equipping them for the task. A, when should I delegate? Boy, that's a tough question, isn't it? You're doing the work and you feel like as a teacher, you're taking the role and you're doing all the contacting and you're, of course, doing the teaching and you're doing the leading and you're your own deacon maybe in your class and you're doing it all. You've got about 8 or 10 people in the class. So when do you delegate? Well, number 1, when I am missing deadlines. I know I am overworked, have too many things on the plate when I begin to miss deadlines. Now, usually that doesn't happen, but what happens with me is I work late at night, take work home with me, or I come back after dinner and work here at the church. I know when I'm getting to that point, then I need to look over what I do and delegate. Number 2, when I'm doing something someone else could do. Now you say, well, aren't you looking at yourself as being someone important? No, there's just certain things, for example, a pastor has to do. I have to preach. I have to be the main preacher. I have to visit in certain situations. I have to do weddings sometimes, funerals sometimes, but I have to lead the church for sure. And I have to lead the staff because they're the ones that help me lead the church. So there's certain things that I have to do. Now, if that takes up all my time, then obviously I have to delegate. Number three, when crises become frequent, there's always something up in the air, and you don't have time to really handle the crises that are coming up in your ministry or in your business, in your family, because you have too many things on the plate. Number four, when I need new challenges. Now, what would that have to do with it? Well, some people I've discovered in the ministry, they'll come in maybe on a Monday and they'll meet with their people. And then on Tuesday, they'll make sure everything's good for the week, leave at lunch, goof off maybe a little bit, have a little time to do this, that, or the other, come back on Thursday, make sure everything's set, and that's it. No, when you delegate something to someone and you're sitting around thinking, wow, I really feel relieved. I really feel like I've got time, maybe a little bit on my hands. It's good to feel that way for about a week, all right? But the next week you need to come back and say, God, there's a lot of things that I need to be doing, a lot of new challenges that I need to make. I don't need to get bored here in the ministry. I need to do extra things here. What do I need to do? Maybe you're a teacher and you think, I just don't have time to meet with my leaders one-on-one, but now you're delegating. Now all of a sudden you've got that time. Or I don't have time to recruit and train a social director in my class. I mean, who's got time to do that, right? Well, now all of a sudden you have time. So it's not that you delegate and have nothing to do. You delegate and take on more things and then delegate them as well at another time. But new challenges in life. Well, B, when should I delegate? And secondly, what should I delegate? Well, first of all, I would encourage you to write down the things that only you can do. For example, I just named mine: lead the church, lead the upper staff level positions, preach, be the main preacher in the church. I can't just come up and say, hey, why don't you preach and you preach and I can't delegate those kind of things. Therefore, I'm gonna have to have a lot of study time behind that because I can't have somebody else write my sermons. For one thing, I don't know if that'd really be right. But secondly, in fact, it wouldn't be unless I gave credit. But secondly, I wouldn't know it. My heart wouldn't be in it if I was preaching somebody else's sermon. So it's going to take me maybe 12, 15 hours of studying to come up with one message. Secondly, write out things that you must do for now. There's certain things in your ministry, in your business, in your family, you think, I can't delegate these now. I have to, certainly during the COVID crisis, our staff is just filled with things that we have to do now that maybe we're really not going to have to do 6 months from now or 3 months from now. Okay, number three, you delegate everything else, okay? You really try to delegate everything else. Not that you want to get things off your plate. No, you want to do new things. You want to get things off your plate because other people can do that and they're going to be fulfilled by doing that. One of the first things I delegated after I came here was baptism. My plate was so full getting to know everybody, getting the ministry in order, that I thought, okay, what can I delegate? Well, I can't delegate the Lord's Supper. I really need to do that. But I can delegate baptisms. And I love doing that. I just love to baptize people. But immediately, once I especially got a minister of evangelism on board, I just let him take care of that entire situation. You delegate things, even the things that you love. I used to love keeping up with the growth stats, the small group numbers and the worship numbers. I like numbers. And so I used to do that. And so one day that was taking too much. It's taken maybe an hour, 2 hours of my time, probably over an hour of my time each week. But that was an hour. That was an hour I needed. And so I had to delegate that. And so C in your outline, we asked the third question, how do you delegate? Well, first of all, number one, we keep kind of coming back to the same thing, but you got to choose the person. You got to choose the right person for the job. You set the example. You show them how to do it. You review a written ministry description with them. Okay. So you're setting the example. You're doing it in front of them. You're taking them with you. Okay. Say, this is what I have in mind. This is what I have in mind during a hospital visitation. I'm going to need you to start doing hospital visitation with me and then do it by yourself. This is how you do it. You walk them through, finding out who's in the hospital. How do you find out? How do you go to the desk? How do you get to the different hospitals? Where do you park? You go through the whole thing. And then you get down that written job ministry description and you review that ministry description with them. Number 4, you teach them the task. You actually get down with them and teach them through that job description. Now, you remember when we did this? This is what I was doing. This is why I was doing it. And you help them to understand what is going on and why they're doing it. Many people, if they understand the why, they will figure out the what, and they'll maybe even do it better than what you taught them to do, which brings me to number 5. You give them the authority with responsibility. They've got to have the authority to get the job done. If they need money, you need to have some way that they can get money to do the job. They need the authority to do it. When you go to the hospitals, you might say, so-and-so is going to start visiting in the hospitals. Don't you think that's great? Maybe announce it in your Sunday school class, your small group. Hey, Joe is going to start visiting the hospitals. And you set them up for success. And so basically, it's kind of like an 80% rule. If you think that person can do 80% as good a job as what you can do by doing it yourself, it's time to delegate. Then, number 6, you make them accountable. Now, some people say weekly meetings. I think that's a good idea, especially at the beginning. But your meetings may be Zoom meetings. Your meetings may be phone calls. Sooner or later, once a month or so, you need to meet with that person in person, whether it's at the church, you meet them in the hallway, you talk them through things, and encourage them then to train someone else. Somewhere along those conversations, don't you enjoy the meeting? Yeah, I'm really liking to do this. Why don't you train someone to even replace you? Or, they're a teacher. We're going to need new teachers. Would you be willing to train someone like we trained you? And so you put that in their mind. And so you recruit, you train, and then you delegate that to them. Then, number 3 in your outline, the last thing that we went over, at least at first, we talked about 3 things. You recruit them, you train them, then you let them do it. You trust them with the ministry. Now, people need 3 things, it's been said. They need significance, to do things that matter, and they create value. And so that's why they need to understand the why, the importance of the job. You're creating value in that job. Number 2, they need to be empowered. They need empowerment to make decisions and do the job. I remember when I was on a mission trip with several people. Herb, I thought, was leading the trip. Herb Long, a former staff member. But he had recruited and trained a good friend of his, Bob, to do that mission trip. So when I joined them in the middle of that mission trip, as I went somewhere else first, I joined them, I think it was in Belgium, to do that mission trip. Bob was in charge, and he was doing a great job. And he told me during that trip, he said, I know you trust Herb to do the job, and you don't stand over him, and you don't micromanage him. I said, yeah, you're right. How do you know that? He says, because Herb does not micromanage me. Herb trusts me, so I know that you trust Herb. Because Bob knew something about something in the business world, and that is this. If I had to micromanage Herb, then Herb would have been nervous. What if I mess up? What if I don't do it right? Wonder if I make a mistake and I really have to pay for it? Wonder if mistakes aren't allowed. Then I'm going to have to make sure Bob does it right and stand over him, because it's going to come back to hurt me. Herb knew that Bob was free to do it because he was free to do that mission trip in the way, within the parameters of what we design mission trips to be. Then, after you empower them, you need to challenge them to fulfill their potential. This is part of what God wants you to do. He wants you to do the work of the ministry. And so therefore, you just continually challenge them after you share with them the significance and empowerment of the job, because people need those 3 things: significance, empowerment, and challenge. Well, then B in your outline under number 3, you monitor carefully. We've already mentioned weekly meetings or phone calls, accountability for decisions that you make. And this is, let me just share this with you. And I share this in balance because while you are expecting someone to do the job 80% of the quality of what you would do it, you really don't necessarily need 80% of the way they do it or the method that they do it. For example, sometimes when you give people authority, they think, well, now that I'm in authority, I'm going to do what I want to do. I remember years and years ago, I hadn't been here very long. In fact, we just built the office building and I left for a couple of weeks for vacation and I got back and there was problems in the staff. And what happened? Well, we had just built the building and the lady who designed the workroom designed it with these nice, beautiful white cabinets, and they all had doors on them. Well, the staff member I put in charge didn't like the doors. And so we hadn't been in the building 2 days when I left. The next day, he said, now that I'm in charge, I'm going to do what I want to do. He took all the doors off so he could see what was in it. He said, I can't see what's in the cabinets. Well, we solved the problem. We put the cabinet doors back on and we put little tags on the outside of what was actually in the cabinet. But what he was saying was, I'm in charge now. I'm going to do what I want to do. I'm going to do what I would do if I were the pastor. That's not what I asked him to do. I asked him to do what I would do as I am the pastor. I am his supervisor. And so you need to teach those who are under your authority, look, it is my responsibility. So I need you to make decisions based on what you think I would do, not what you want to do. So there's accountability for decisions. In saying that, sometimes they're going to make the wrong decision. They're going to do what you think maybe you would even do, or they wouldn't know what you would do. They make the wrong decisions. You have to give them room to fail. It's okay. You can say, look, maybe I needed to train you a little bit better on that. I can't train you on everything. And so therefore we're training as kind of we go. And because there's no way they're going to be perfect. Just no way at all. Now, here's the problem. Once you take back that ministry, relationships are hurt. So you need to do everything you can. You train them up front. You let them have that ministry. You turn them loose. If they really just can't do it, you retrain them. You really re-explain the job. Do whatever you have to do. But sooner or later, you may have to say, I need to put you somewhere else. You're just not a fit here. And they're going to argue with you sometimes. Oh, no, I love this job. I love it. This is the greatest job in the world, But no one else thinks so. And so you have to be fair to everybody else. And it's going to hurt relationships. So you have to be careful. You have to do your homework. You have to recruit properly. That's why it's another reason it's a dangerous thing, just to simply ask for volunteers. All right, number 4, why we don't delegate to others. This is a big one, right? Because we have reasons why we don't. And one of the main reasons is insecurity. We're just insecure. Wow, this person might do it better, or I might lose authority. He might take my place. I know that of a pastor, a good friend of mine, was complaining to me one day. He was just all up in arms. He phoned me and said, I don't know what I'm going to do with this new associate pastor I have. He took a funeral away from me. And I thought to myself, wow, I have so many funerals here. Man, anybody can take anything they want, If they've got a better relationship, that's great. But what he was saying is he had his insecurities and he felt like in order to be everybody's pastor, he had to do all the funerals. I remember one Christmas, I've been here about, maybe 5 years. I've been delegating a lot, training a lot of people in ministry. And we had a Christmas Eve service over in the old Legacy Hall. And this lady came to me with a big platter of cookies, chocolate chip cookies. I'm talking about they're still smelling, and had little saran wrap over them. And I thought, wow, this is a nice Christmas gift. She came up to me and she says, do you know where so-and-so is? And I said, no, I think he's a staff member. And I said, no, I think he's gone home. She said, oh, no, I missed him. Oh, well, you can have them. And so they weren't for me at all. And so when you delegate, you have to be willing for somebody else to get the cookies. You have to be willing for somebody else to get the credit. You have to be willing to share the responsibility and share the glory. and share ministry with other people. But some people are just insecure. B in your outline, perfectionism. How many perfectionists do you know? Well, the job's not going to be done like I want it to be done, so I won't delegate it. Well, probably it won't. And the trouble with perfectionism is that none of us are perfect. And the job that you think needs to be done in a certain way is just your opinion. Okay, it's my opinion. If I'm a perfectionist, and I'm not, I don't feel like I am, I want excellence without perfection. But if I'm a perfectionist, I'm going to say, okay, this is the job I want done. And it's not doesn't have anything to do with my message or anything like that I have to be involved in. But this is what I want done, and you didn't do it exactly the way I want, so therefore you did it wrong. No, it's just my opinion on how it should be done. But they probably won't. But as long as you're a perfectionist, your ministry is going to be very, very limited. Remember what I said at the very beginning of this message, a rule of thumb. For every 150 people you want in a small group, you've got to hire another staff person. Well, for every so many people you want in your small group, you're going to have another teacher. For every this many people in a small group, you're going to have another deacon. For this many people, these many doors that you're greeting, you're going to have more greeters. You're going to have to learn to delegate, knowing the job's not going to be done exactly like you want it to be done. So C, fear. Well, the job will not get done at all. And sometimes, unfortunately, it will not. And that's why you have to go back and retrain, make sure you get faithful people. And again, when you recruit from a pool of people that have a job that, even though it's vitally important, like ushering, greeting, if they don't show up, an usher doesn't show up, for example, we can always get someone else and say, well, you ushered last week, I know, but would you help us today? But on the other hand, if the person's a teacher and just doesn't show up for the job, boy, that's a problem. You see, the higher you go up in leadership, the fewer options you have. And sometimes even those in responsibility won't get the job done. Thankfully, that very seldom happens at our church. Then D, easier just to do it yourself. And it is for a short time. But remember, that's going to be your ministry. The 100 as a pastor, 150, 200 in worship, actually, 150 in small group. That's going to be your ministry for the rest of your life until you learn to delegate. And then E in your outline, you feel you can do it better. Again, that's an opinion, is it not? As long as the person is operating within the parameters of ministry that you've set forth, they're doing it like you've trained them to do it with some variations because they're their own individual person, but they're not working against what you're trying to do. They're working for what you're trying to do. Then you need to be able to delegate that in your own heart and your own mind. So what are the benefits? We've already gone over some of them. What are the benefits of equipping other people? Real quickly, it fulfills your calling. Ephesians 4, 11, and 12, we've already read that. You can go back and read it again at the first of your lesson. B, it gets Christians involved in fulfilling their ministry. Again, Ephesians 4, equipping the saints for the work of the ministry. Not pew setters. We are all called to be ministers. Every job is important in the church. Every ministry is important, and everybody's called to some ministry. C, in your outline. It frees up the delegator for new challenges. Then D, it creates new ideas as more minds are involved in thinking. You'll be surprised when you build your team bigger, then all kinds of ideas are going to flow. And you need to make sure no idea is really a bad idea, even though sometimes it is for your particular setting. But you entertain those ideas, and soon you'll find you're coming up with some really good ones, as well as some of those that are not as good, or maybe you can use later. Then E, it multiplies the ministry. And I remember as I pastored my first church and then pastored my second church, for example, we started a church in Atlanta, Georgia, got up to about 200. I added some part-time people that just wasn't making it happen. And finally, I added a full-time staff person on board that I trained in ministry. And then we reached and blew right through 300 people. We ended up with about 325. And soon after that, I moved here to Oviedo. And so it multiplies the ministry where you can minister to more people. So in short, Roman numeral 6, I want to give you a 5-step process. And really, when you haven't been able to remember all of this, I think you're going to remember this little thing that John Maxwell once gave us. Number 1, I do it. That's the process. I go and do it. I know what I'm doing. I can do that ministry. I don't have to wonder how it's being done. I can do it. Number 2, I do it and you are with me. So once I learn to do it, once I'm comfortable with it, I get someone else to come along with me as I'm not doing ministry by myself. Number 3, then you do it and I am with you. Number 4, you do it and I cheer you on. And then number 5, you do it and another is with you. So you get the multiplication process involved. You're going to do it. You're going to do it with somebody with you. Then you do it and I'm with you. I'm going to monitor and say, make sure I'm training you right. Make sure you get it. And then I'm going to encourage you, cheer you on as you do it. And then you're going to take on someone else to help you in that ministry and to multiply your ministry. So I want to challenge you. Pick out somebody. All right. You're in the church and you think to yourself, I'm not really to the point of really delegating. Delegate anyway. Train someone anyway. That's the only way the ministry is going to grow, when people are engaged and we grow the leadership base of the church. That's part of the big reason why we're doing CrossLife University, is for us to disciple people so they can move out in ministry and then finally leadership within our church and the community. So pick out someone, pick them out and say, I want to recruit that, pray over them, and pick out some job that you feel like is going to be a good job for them. Just not something left over, a good job for them, and train them for it. Can I pray with you? God, thank you so much for this time that we can be together. I pray, God, that we would take these things to heart. I pray that we've learned something here that we can take with us. And I pray that we'll be able to pick out someone. And as we do, choose someone for the ministry. I pray that you would guide us through this process of training them, that our church would be more effective and our Christian believers in our church would be more effective for ministry. And it's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Well, next week, we're going to be looking at vision. And so join us once again for number 6, the 6th installment of these leadership lessons. God bless you.